So what I'm going to do is start, first of all, asking each of them, because that's not much of an introduction, but maybe give each of our panelists a minute to say what motivates them to do this work, to keep getting up each morning and just to keep doing what they're doing. So let me start with you, Sean.
So outside of the obvious, I started a company that assesses spaces, provides context on how to increase the accessibility and inclusion of that space, and then provides a certification for it. The reason we decided to provide a certification on a space after it achieves a higher level of certification is to start engaging the community and getting people out of their homes and out of their comfortability and engaging more with different elements of the city, different things that they could participate in, and really start equaling the scale in terms of the equality of opportunity that's available for every demographic of human being, including those with a disability. Right now, the built environment is probably the largest barrier, and then following that is obviously the social barriers of inclusion that we feel improving the accessibility is that first step. So I spend a lot of time with architects, designers, developers. We've done some work with the land developers. I presented at the Canadian Home Builders Association in Ottawa. I'm presenting with their executive board in Banff in March to provide a residential certification for accessible homes. So elderly adults are able to continue to age in place longer and be able to identify the facets of their household that would need to be adjusted in order to do so.
Thanks, Sean. Dan?
Thanks, Shane. I think, as Franco said, this is a journey in life, and my journey, it's taken me to a point where I am today, where it's not about what I do, it's about who I've become and who I am on a daily basis. So what I mean by that is that when I was 20 years old, I went over to Helsinki, Finland on a university exchange to work over there. I went over as a 20-year-old socialist and came back as a 21-year-old capitalist. Just because of the experience. I had my 21st birthday in downtown Leningrad, so that's a context. But the reality is, when I started my first business, when I was 24 years old. And at that time, it was torpedoes be damned, I'm going to make money, right? I'm going to make money, and I'm going to make sure that I make money. Well, over the years, my experiences and my engagement in the community with Rotary has really started to shape who I am and what I do and my philosophy in business. And I talked to Sean earlier. Part of that journey was being on the board and chair of accessible housing, and understanding the issues with AISH and all those types of things, and the whole disability issues, right? And I was on the board and chair of Hull, Child and Family Services. So a lot of you know that. I mean, they're the largest provider of child services in Southern Alberta. And I got to be chair right when we had a government doing the biggest cuts ever back in the early 90s, right? Wow. I got to learn a whole bunch about that too. And about, what was really amazing to me is when we really looked at the issues what these kids were being addressed by, it was poverty was at the root of the cause. Poverty was at the root of the cause. So now, as I kind of get more and more engaged in the community, more and more engaged in international type things as well, my business philosophy and how I act in my business has totally changed. Absolutely totally changed. So when you hear these words like living salary and living, ability to meet your monthly obligations, and I look at payroll and staffing and what I do, boy, it changes how I look at it. And so at the end of the day, it's who we are, it's service above self, and I get jazzed up every day. This is going to sound corny. I get jazzed up every day seeing how can I impact somebody's life in a positive way.
Thank you very much, Dan. Gail?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Gail Stepanik-Keber, and I found a note in a scribbler from grade 1. My daughter's 6 right now, and I found my grade 1 scribbler, and it asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the response that I put is, I want to be a social worker. And I would say today, given that this is a journey, that's more closer to the truth of what I do at Servus Credit Union. What makes me jump out of bed every day right now is the fact that 55% of our members and about the same percentage of our employees are coping financially. That is the fact is that I want to change that. I want to be that servant leader that works with 2,100 champions. Vern Albush, my dear colleague, is in the audience. He's one of those champions. We want to shift the perspective in Alberta. 1 out of 2 Albertans are in debt. They don't have enough financial relief for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months' salary. We need to change that. We're a financial institution, and we can change that. So with our noble purpose, shaping member financial fitness, that really resonates with my why. And in 2004, I took my master's in leadership, and I came across a very good book by Lance Secretan, and it's called Inspired Leader. And what Lance asks you is, what is your why? What is your purpose? What is your calling? What are you meant to do in this world? What is your be? What is the behaviors? How are you going to live your life? What are the actions that you're going to instill? And the last is, what will you do? That is truly the action part. So why be do's? And I would say that my calling is to marry the financial world with the health sector, because financial well-being is an underpinning of mental wellness. It's an underpinning of our physical well-being. It's an underpinning of our wholeness. And frankly, money is scary. We don't talk about it. We need to talk about it. There's too much money shame in the world. We have to be vulnerable, just like Tim was this morning in sharing his story. So that social worker note is resonating really strong with me right now. So that's why I'm getting up every morning.
Thank you so much, Gail. Well, let's kind of, Dan, maybe let me just start with you then. You began to talk a little bit about your journey, but specifically to your businesses. Like, what are some of the things in that journey that you started, as your personal life changed and who you became, and what are some things you started to do in the businesses you acquired, ran over the years?
I'll use a case study right now, today. So Curve Distribution is a national distribution company. We import general merchandise, electronics, and other general merchandise from primarily Asia, bring it to a warehouse here in Calgary, and then we sell it into Walmart across the country, Canadian Tire, Shoppers, Rexall. We're in pretty much all the different chains. Well, I just acquired another distribution company. It's in food distribution. I won't get into the business logic, but it is an interesting thing. And I've acquired, with this, 40 people and a culture. And I was saying earlier to some people at the table that my biggest challenge right now, the systems are easy. You can put a machine in that does debits and credits, and you can, does logistical tracking. You can do all that that's easy. Well, I've got people that make it easy, but the tough part is changing the culture of how we treat our people. So I have in the back, there's about 10 people in the warehouse working and pushing, product in, bringing it in, taking it out. And I asked, one of them, they're having problems with one of the young ladies that was there. And I asked the question, they came to me, they wanted to fire her. I asked the question, is Christine married? No, she's a single mom. Oh, how many children does she have? She has 2 children. Oh. And what do we pay Christine? We pay Christine the minimum wage. And I sat back and I said, here we are. We're trying to fire somebody because she was late coming in because she had to get her kid to school. Oh, she had to leave early because one of her kids got hurt. Oh, she's having a hard time getting a babysitter. And we're paying her a salary that won't meet the rent bill. And we want to fire her. So I stopped the firing, and I changed the culture. I'm trying to change this culture. And we had a total review of salaries and what we're doing and how we treat people. And what it's doing is it's coming back to me. Within Rotary, there's a four-way test. There's a four-way test. And this four-way test was actually created back in the 30s by a Rotarian who was taking over a bankrupt distribution company, fruit distribution, actually. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, this four-way test starts like this. And everything that I think, say, and do, is it the truth? So number one, that kind of binds in with my Christian values and whatever. So that's an easy one, right? Here's the second thing. Is it fair to all concerned? And I'm going to go there because through the years, what I found is in business, and I taught at U of C in Haskayne for 15 years as a sessional instructor, we get so focused on one stakeholder in the whole formula. We get focused on the shareholders, the owners. But the stakeholders in every business include your employees. They include your partners. They include your suppliers. They include your customers. And what I've seen is there's a gap. There's a gap now between what the senior people will take in the salary and expect as a salary and as a return, and what the people at the entry level in your business take. Boy, I tell you, that you look at some of these organizations, and it's 100 times. There's some really obscene cases where it's more than that in salary and compensation. In our organization, we have a philosophy that the senior person will be no more than 4 times the salary of the person at the entry level. No more than 4 times. You can make policy things, you can make easy things happen if you think about what's fair to all. And that goes to the third test. Is it beneficial to everybody? Well, I seem to have done okay. We're surviving, we're growing, we're prosperous. We've got lots of really cool things happening. Oh, by the way, Christine, her attendance has gone way up. Her satisfaction, her stress level's gone way down, and now she's engaged in helping do new things, right? So it's beneficial. The fourth thing will build better friendship and goodwill. Well, I tell you, have you ever walked into a company and you know there's a buzz? You know that people want to be there? We got a buzz. You walk into my group and people want to be there. They're coming into my office. When I first took this group over and we brought them all together, I had an open door policy, and I had to go grab people to bring them into my office to show them where it was because they were afraid to be there. Now, every morning when they're getting there, they're coming by with their coffee, want to chat, want to give me ideas, want to work together. So that's kind of my journey.
Thank you so much, Dan. Sean, I'd be interested, as you've been set up the company, what are some of the barriers or the challenges you've faced in trying to implement what you'd like to implement?
No pun intended on the barrier.
No pun intended. You're absolutely right, Dan.
So I think, obviously, being social driven with starting the business and focusing primarily on the social cause and what it's going to correct became my primary focus, and was also the way I was selling it. I thought, if I can see the value in this, other people will also see it, and they'll give me their money, and everyone will be happy, and everything will be better in the world. And then I started learning that, there's these things called ROIs, and, there needs to be economic value and benefit, and, all of these other justifications that they need to then either justify to their board, they need to justify to their team, or they just need to do it in terms of being able to continue running a profitable business and not just buying on an emotional basis. Although emotion and that piece is an element, it's something that helps kind of push them over the edge. If it's me versus someone, that social cause is what gets me past the finish line. But what I had to start doing was building out the economic purpose behind why should businesses be increasing their accessibility? Why should they be interested in hiring somebody with a disability? Why should they be interested in losing 4 tables out of their restaurant to be more accessible? Because during their peak times, they're now 4 tables shy. So I ended up having to go back and building out all of these economic reasons. Restaurants, I was able to find they're only ever full Fridays and Saturdays, and it's only during a certain amount of time. I was then able to correlate the value individuals and elderly people have with places that become accommodating to them and the loyalty that they show. So I was able to create an economic value or purpose behind you lose 4 tables, but you increase how full you are throughout 7 days as opposed to just focusing on your 2. So the businesses that we've turned and created as accessible and certified businesses, not only are they now certified so they can market out to a demographic that's 20% larger than their competition, but that 20% is far more loyal to their business than the other 80. So we were able to build that out. Same with office buildings, and we work with Prospect and other hiring agencies that have amazing statistics and amazing support around the economic values behind hiring inclusively, or for the property owners or the JLLs and property management groups. They now have other criteria to differentiate themselves from other Class A buildings. We're LEED Gold. Well, so is every other building. Now that you can certify yourself on this social cause, you're now attracting not only the people with disabilities, but everybody who also knows somebody who may happen to deal with barriers in their own lives. They may happen to know somebody who has a child and utilizes a stroller. They happen to know somebody that's used a button because their hands are full of coffees or pizzas or something like that to get into a building. There's these values that they can attach to that drive my social mission, but drive their economic point as well. And so attaching what I found was really, really important on the social side to what our clients find really, really important on the economic side is what allowed us to sell it to them as a product that would benefit their business, not just something that would help them sleep easier at night.
Thank you very much, Sean. Gail, you were given a job at Service to do the very thing we're talking about. Tell us a little bit about what that was like and what you had to do, because Service is another large credit union in this province.
It is.
Just share a little bit of that experience.
Yeah, okay, so tell a bit of a story about how this came about. In 2015, our CEO, I just come back from mat leave, and he asked me to retool our mission. And I don't know about your companies, but our mission statement had 3 motherhood statements. I still can't remember what they were. But fundamentally, they did equate to shaping member financial fitness. And that mission was why our employees jumped out of bed every morning, but no one could remember it. We had a vision statement. So he didn't bargain for what I brought back, though, because I didn't bring back a mission statement, a retooled mission statement. My good colleague Vern and one of our other colleagues on the marketing side came back with, you know what, we really need to be social-based. So the social-based work on our CSR side intersected with this mission work. And we came back and said, you know what, we don't need a mission. We need to have a purpose, but moreover, we need to have a noble purpose, because our purpose has to be bigger than us. And we brought the concept of financial fitness, not the words, to the executive team, and it was right before Christmas. And I remember it being palpable, the energy that shifted in the room. And we had been on a journey of merger for about 5-6 years at this point. and the energy shifted, which was the catalyst to know that we were onto something and that we were a financial institution. It was staring us in the face all along, but we were not focused on what we were meant to do in this world. And so we took it as from the executive team to the board. The board immediately said, yes, go forth and finalize this work. And we rolled it out in 2016. And let's just say that it's a journey because we're in the banking industry and we definitely have to be sustainable. We're a cooperative. And if we want to be stewards of the next generation and we want to keep our business model of cooperative alive, we need to keep our company going. So this idea of profit and purpose to us are synonymous. They go together. And we now have a 10-year compelling future that has our aspiration of wanting to be 30 billion in assets. We're now 16. But moreover, we're going to have a return on assets that's consistent so we can give back to our employees and to our members because we give back profit share. But we also have a very high score for member financial fitness, a score of 80 out of 100. And right now it sits at 67, which means the majority of our members are coping. We want them to be healthy. And the other measure is that we will have 75% of our 400,000 members, who knows what it will be in 10 years' time, that number, 75% of our membership will have goals. Goals that they have written down with us to do whatever they want to do next. So my job was early days just to get buy-in. Buy-in at the executive level, buy-in at the board level, and the rest, frankly, was then all about our champions. Marlene's another colleague of mine, and she is working here in Calgary, and it's really about how do you enable 2,100 champions to align themselves to their own financial fitness, and then to take that to our members. So we've spent pretty much the last 3 years focusing internally on our employees. And I'm happy to say that our employee financial fitness score is 71, which is points higher than our members, which it has to be. If we're going to lead authentically, we better make sure that we're taking care of our people. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I think and we're going to open it up in a minute. The other question I'd have for each of you, and maybe Sean, I'll start with you. When's the right time to start?
I don't know if I was the right person to start with that.
That's where you would try.
Mine was after I broke my neck. So mine was when I could figure out how to turn what I believed in into a business. And mine was changing the statistics that are associated with individuals who have disabilities. So the 3 times higher suicide rates, the 6 times higher depression rates due to isolation. 1 in 11 individuals use a mobility aid, 1 in 5 people identify as having a disability. How many people see anywhere close to that number around in our communities? So as soon as I was able to take those things that were bugging me and decide how I was going to implement that change and then create a business out of it, or at least a business model. I did a business model canvas. That's the new hot thing to do, I guess. So I did one of those, and it started making some sense, and it started coming together, and that's when I decided, time to pull the trigger. I figured it out and move forward and don't look back.
That's good. Thanks, John. Dan? When's the right time to start?
Yesterday. And what I mean by that is it starts with a reflection of where you are today. And I think that all of us that have businesses or running businesses or societies or agencies or whatever we're running, we all know where our warts are. We all know where maybe we're not aligned with our own values and ethics at times. And it's uncomfortable to address those, right? And I think that that's the first thing that's really important is to be able to have this diversity of thought. And that means being able to look in the mirror, see what you're seeing and understanding what you're seeing, and being willing to talk about it and understand other people's perspectives and what your own perspective is, and be willing to make the change that you want to see. Now, who said that? There's somebody, Gandhi, I think, said that, right? Be the change you want to see. So it's really important to do that. And the one thing that I want to get in, and I haven't got in, I think you were talking about you making a profit and being returned. It's okay to make a profit. It's a good thing, because that allows you to do all these other things that you're doing. And what's really amazing is when you engage all your stakeholders, including your employees, and even you bring in your suppliers into the discussion about making a profit. It's amazing when you say how you're going to reinvest in them, and you're going to reinvest in growth and reinvest in what's happening in the business. Their ideas are way better than mine. And so that's where to start. So I'd ask you to start yesterday and then start looking to tomorrow to change your own habits.
Thanks, Dan. Gail.
Yeah, I would say a bit of a different slant. I would say start iteratively. And the reason why I say that, and I put my innovation hat on, this is a journey. Therefore, we launched this knowing that it was a minimum viable product. The executive team said, Gail, just get it out there. But it wasn't perfect. And that was so unlike us, because we took data paralysis and everything else. It took us forever to act on something because we were caught up in old business paradigms. And so the question was, let's just get it out there. And it won't be perfect. And we will make mistakes along this journey of getting the right tools to our people and to our members to make sure that everyone is in this financial fitness journey together. So I would say iteratively, because if we're truly going to design, think, and change our business model, we have to do it continually. We have to start it, stop it, fail, like all of that. And I would say it's a bit of a bumpy, it's not a start and a finish. It's a journey. And being a credit union, my gosh, we're 80 years old. We're a business model. So I would say it started back then. It started at kitchen tables and church basements with members that got together to say the banks aren't serving us well. We need a different way to do banking. And so it started way back then. Now we're saying, we've got to accelerate this. Like, there's people that need us. And I would profess, because we used to say, and I've been with the company for 21 years, oh, it's okay, we're not a hospital. This isn't a life and death business. I say BS, be crap to that. Because I had a friend that committed suicide because her business after 20 years was hit by the economic downturn. So don't tell me that financial services, we're not in the life and death business. So we have to change and start and continue and change. Anyway, I got a bit passionate there, but...
That's wonderful. That's great. I love it. That's great. Well, folks, honestly, this is our workshop in this room today. It's us. We happen to be here. And so we'd like to open it up. Our panel can just help focus. You've heard some of their experiences, but what are you curious about? What are you worried about? Those are the questions running through this whole Soul Next Economy this year. As you sit there, because you chose to come to this workshop, either a question, idea, suggestion, anything at all that anyone would like to start with. Yes?
Question for Mr. Doherty. I'm curious, your business model is importing items and then redistributing them. What work have you done, if any, on the sustainability of your supply chain?
We've done quite a bit of work on that, actually. And it starts at where we acquire our product. We have social audits done at the factories that we participate with. We're doing an entire green chain review at this point as far as the greenhouse gas, our footprint. And we're doing that right now. We're working with, even with our suppliers on packaging and recyclable products, getting rid of the plastics out of the program. So we've working hard on that, and what's interesting to me about this is that a lot of these initiatives were brought to me by my staff to do, And I love it because that's exactly where we want to go.
That's great. Thank you. Other comments and questions? Yes. And maybe you can say who you are, because.
My name is Taylor. I'm a student here at Edmonton University in the business program.
Wonderful.
So you mentioned your MVP, your zero product. I'm just wondering how many times have you changed and revised before this came to full fruition, or if it ever came to full fruition?
Good question. I would say we're constantly iterating, shaping member financial fitness, and we're into year 3 right now of the focus for the organization. But the one thing is, it's also our strategy. So every single area of the company is, how do I help do this? But we took a model from the States in order to define what is financial fitness, how do you measure it, how do you actually build tools around it? And I would say where the MVP is getting even more detailed is around the measurement side. I talked a lot about the financial fitness score, but at the end of the day for us, what does success look like? And then how do you build? So for example, right now we launched a roundup tool. Our innovation team came up with a goal setting app in our online banking, but we have so much work to do. Like we need to get credit score information up for our members on our site. Like we're playing a data digital catch-up game at the same time, and then we're trying to accelerate this work. So very good question. I would say it's never over, but frankly it was, let's get the noble purpose out there, and then let's start championing 2,100 people and their thinking and get it flourishing throughout. And I would say we're just starting to externalize this work. Like it's been an internal game, and now it's time to unleash it to our member owners, and frankly, they need to be a part of it. They're going to tell us what it should also look like. Yeah, so thank you for your question. You can help us with that.
Other comments? Karen.
Hi, Karen Whiteman. I'm an educator in the faculty of business for a couple of universities, but also a nonprofit person for the last 20 years. So what advice, or what's the most important message that I should be giving to my students about social purpose and business?
Who'd like to? Sean, you want to?
Sean.
You're probably the youngest of the group, so you probably.
Yeah, I hope so. I kind of want to go back to what was already iterated and not to be afraid to make money. I think that the biggest point and kind of what gets lost in social enterprise is this lack of capitalism. And I think most change happens with those organizations that have the economy of scale to do so. So, the struggling business putting together under $1 million annually, the impact or the change that they're, having, or the impact that they have on whatever social mission they're driving, probably isn't at the same impact as Virgin, right? Like there's just, so you have to put a profit model first, even though you want to have a social mission, a social drive, you want to accomplish something on a social basis. You can run your business properly, you can do it as a B Corp, you can do these pieces, but if you're not making any money, you're going to have your second business idea really, really quick.
Dan? Is there...
Yeah, I'd like to add to that a bit, because I think we're living in an age right now that is really dangerous, in that we have a number of populist ideas and politics happening in our world. And with that comes this desire to blame, to find problems, to point fingers, and not to provide solution. So if you're starting a business, there still needs to be a purpose. And that purpose needs to be providing a solution. I mean, you go back to basic business and economics, bring scarce resources together and provide it to the market in the most effective, efficient way, right? Well, there needs to be a solution. So what I'm seeing too much now, and when I taught as well, lots of great issues We're really good at having a dialogue about the issues. But what we really need to do is get right down in the mud and start talking about what the solution looks like and how do you measure that solution? How do you measure, if you're doing a social enterprise, and we heard from Sean, he's got some great measures on what success means. And I think that's where we fail. We don't talk about that a lot. And then the other thing is, the real issue I'm finding today is that I think our community, we've lost our resiliency. We're into a blame game, and we're not into the solution game. Even if we think we've got the right solution, nobody's shooting the puck. It's like our dear Flames, they skate around on the power play, and everybody's yelling, shoot the puck. And then they don't, and they lose it, and it goes back. Well, that's the same in business. If we don't shoot the puck, and that, to your point, is that you have to try things. You have to do it. Every shot on net isn't going to be successful. Everything that you put out there isn't going to be successful. But make darn sure you're going in for the rebound after you've made the shot. And you know where it is. So I hope that helps. I mean, because I think that's really a big part of what's happening out there.
Well, first of all, thank you for being an educator. So important. I would say two things. One is make sure you understand the problem. So I agree with what Dan said, but it's truly using design thinking and human-centric thinking. And sometimes the problem isn't what we think it is. So go deep on the problem. And the second would be collaborate. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate.
Great. Thanks, Gail. Yes.
So you two actually.
Maybe you can tell us your name.
Oh, sorry. I'm Micheline. Yeah. So you two actually touched on two things that I kind of wanted to talk about or ask about an intersection. That a lot of what's been discussed today, at least at my table, is around how the solution is collaboration, but how no one is ever the one to really take that collaboration and connections and those solutions and actually champion them and put them into practice. So who should we be looking to champion these solutions if we're meant to be more solution-focused?
Gail?
Look at yourself first. Like, if you really want to be part of the change, you be the champion, the collaborator, the person to bring the group together. Yes, there's incubators, there's labs, there's networks. We're in them right now today. We've, REAP and all of these great organizations. But I would say it starts with us. I have a water bottle with us that our Service Women's Network gave each of us, and it says it starts with me. It starts with me. So what's my part of this versus the blame game? Yeah. I always say one way to get a naysayer, to stop being a naysayer, is invite them to be part of the solution. And it's a great way to go, oh, you're asking me? Yeah, if you want change, come with us. We're going to help you make that change. Does that answer?
I think we've all been in those meetings or classrooms or wherever where there's somebody who's always got the best problem in the world. They're really good at identifying problems. Even when you have a solution, what's their first words out of their mouth? It's negative. It'll never work, right? And it is. And the best way to do that is, as an individual, when you're experiencing that, is to switch that around and just say, I've heard what your issues are, so what is the solution? Try to get people part of it, right? And in my case, I'm a smaller business, I'm not a big credit union, if somebody continues to be the problem, they'll be somebody else's problem.
Go ahead, Sean.
I think the other big thing is, if you're looking to collaborate, find a way that your solution helps solve their problem. So you're driving your own mission forward and you're looking at organizations to collaborate with to further your own mission or cause. They're all doing the same thing. And if you can be the person that says, well, you know, I can do this, this, and this for your causes while still furthering whatever your drive is, and there's alignment in there, collaboration becomes very, very easy because it's self-motivated and it's driving self-interest to a certain extent while furthering a multitude of initiative that the organizations around the table are looking to do.
That's great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, folks. Any other comments, questions people have? Yes.
What do you see as the role for government in this, or do you have it?
Great. Sean, since you got the mic already.
Oh, man. All right. That's a good one. I think government has roles to play, obviously, especially in Canada, that they are so ingrained in kind of the economics and business side. You know, outside of the obvious being kind of grant and support, there needs to be a change in kind of legislation or a change in policy that supports social endeavors. So lending practices, for me it's like building and design standards, but also like HR policy and all of those types of things. But for every unique business, there's obviously policy that could change to help further support some of those initiatives and drives. And here in Canada especially, trade, like having more fluid border and all of that, so that we're gaining the value of other international countries and the stuff that they've been able to create and do. We're a small population base in Canada, so leveraging those of larger ones, I think, would be kind of a very helpful tool that government could lend, is creating more of an international presence than we currently have.
Yeah, I would say I believe government has a big role to play. I do think about the Business Roundtable in the US and the 200, and I heard 192 businesses that signed the statement that Tim talked about. That will shift companies, hallelujah. Like, this is a long time for anyone who's been in the CSR world. It's music to hear that businesses are going to focus on the stakeholder, which would include the environment, not only the shareholder. So government has a role to play in supporting businesses that want to do good, but also it is about removing legislation barriers. And I think about the Bank Act, for example. The way Service actually got into corporate social responsibility is I identified a risk in 2002 that actually, when the Bank Act was changed, it said that every bank has to produce a social accountability report. And I'm like, wow, that's a compliance ask. That means that all the big banks in Canada now have to be compliant in producing a social accountability report. So right away, they would be coming into the credit union space by wanting to do good. So interesting, now we see RBC, TD, Scotia, others, you know, watershed support, greening, that came out of a legislative change. It also came out of probably the hope to do better business. So I would say there's a fundamental shift that's happening that government will have to catch up with and or enforce. Payday lending, our changes that our government made, they actually approached Servus Credit Union to say, hey, would you actually create a product that is way better than any of the cash stores or others to help the person who's feeling very marginalized? So I would say government and corporate, I would say we have a role to play together, but moreover, the consumer is the one that's going to drive it. So I would say government, corporations, we all have a role. And what is it? The other thing I'd like to say, though, I wish governments would be into 10, 25, 30-year planning cycles. But they're not. They're into 4-year planning cycles because it's about the next election. If we could get out of that thinking, I know China plans for 30 years, generational, way different than us. They have a different government setup. But I do believe that we need to get there because I feel that our world, we're not thinking about, my 6-year-old. We're thinking about 4 years from now, and that pains me to think that we're making policy that's as good as 4 years.
Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And I think that our governments, federally and provincially, have failed us that way. Because we get so focused on our support that we forget about the balance of the population. And you saw that in the federal election, where we have now polarized nations within our own country. Right now, in Alberta, we've had 2 extreme type governments, again, looking after different parts of the population. They're not looking after us as a whole. I was so proud to be a Canadian because we were more concerned about the good of the whole population rather than about the individual rights and freedoms. So I think there needs to be just a fundamental change in the way where our governments operate and how we do that. The follow part, the only reason they're following right now is they're following their philosophies and extreme populist views, which I think is a recipe for disaster. The last thing is get out of the way. In business, Franco knows this, I have a partner in a number of businesses, but my primary one, we're growing, we're prosperous, we're healthy. And I'm tired of hearing about a single industry's issues. And I think they need to get out of the way and start working together, and we'll get a lot better solution. So,
Thank you very much. Great comments. Yes.
My name is Livia Stoyke. I have a very early social enterprise, and so I'm probably coming from a very different point of view because I do have the why of why I want to do something. I'm not exactly clear on the how or the what, but I also see it as a great opportunity to be able to be part of these conversations because I feel like I don't need to apply those, B Corps kind of criteria to my business. I just want to build my business based on these principles. So my question to you is maybe what would be your advice or what would be those few things, what do you think are most pressing kind of problems, what need to be solved?
Who would like to?
So probably your how and what would be the first ones. Probably your how and what would be the first ones to identify before looking at B Corp, before looking at employees, before looking at scaling. You want to look at how you as a business are going to generate income, how you yourself are going to be able to perform whatever service or provide whatever good you want to do to solve the why that you've identified. I think it was said best already. There's a lot of people that identify the issue, but don't come up with a solution on how to do that. Once you have your solution, once you have the thing you can do that people are going to pay you for, then you can start looking at the policies and the things that you want to model your business after. You can bring in advisors to create a board that can help kind of guide the ship with you. You can implement those pieces. One really great thing kind of as you're discovering this is being part of these conversations, utilizing ATB Entrepreneur Center, utilizing resources that exist in the city that are free. Thrive is another amazing one that you can help discover those elements so that you can start generating revenue and see if your business is something that's going to be tangible or that somebody's going to pay you for. And then again, like I say, you can start worrying about those other facets down the road.
I think the most important thing of all is to share your idea. And share your idea everywhere you go, everybody you talk to, every social media avenue you have, share your idea. And what that does is, I found that I come up with some crazy ideas at times, and I'll throw them out there. And sure enough, within 2-3 months, I've got friends coming back at me, or business associates, or whatever, coming back at me, well, what have you done about that? Or here's an idea I was thinking about. I saw somebody, I was just talking to Franco, and he just said, had that dialogue. It is so important to share it. And then once you share, it's so important to listen to the feedback. The third thing for me would be, whatever social kind of cause or whatever you're trying to resolve, find a way to be engaged in other groups that are touching in that same world. Be engaged as a volunteer, be engaged as however it is, so that you share your ideas there, and then you get the feedback, but also you're starting to better understand the whole issue, and that will lead to your how and your what.
So I have a question back for you. So you know your why, you've started a social enterprise, so congratulations, but you're...
I'm like social volunteer now.
Okay, so can I ask, what is your why?
Well, I came from Czech Republic, so I immigrated. I didn't know anybody here in Canada. I couldn't speak English. I didn't feel like I was part of the community. I didn't feel like I belonged, because I live in Canmore. Actually, it's pretty closed and it's very not affordable to live in, so I couldn't really utilize my my professional background, which was physiotherapy, because it was from a different country. So my why is that I want to make it accessible to others, to be able to find a way into the community. How I do that is through cash-free exchanges of barter and skill sharing, and exchanging gifts, because I believe that everybody has a gift of what they can offer to somebody else to enrich their lives, and everything what I do is pretty much an extension of what I've been through, so I want to share that with others and collaborate, and there's a lot more.
Wow, okay. Give her a round of applause for sharing her story. That's awesome. But your question to us was really around what problems there are to solve, right? In this space that you're talking about, being a new immigrant, the connection, wanting to barter skills and products or what have you, is that the more the how and the...
Yeah, like what do you see, like somebody here was saying, that the collaboration might be a big part of,
Yes.
What's the issue? So I don't really know how to formulate this question, but it's more like, I can still pivot what I do, and I want to direct my gift, my drive, my passion to these, whatever it is, what needs to
be solved. Yeah, so I think it is about connecting with all of us, with many of us, because you're trying to be an innovator around a problem and helping to identify it. And there are tools to actually help us identify problems and go deeper in them. And there are incubators, I love the one that was mentioned today by, I can't remember the name of the company, Kambuka, but they actually have a facility for you to actually jump in there.
I'm part of the Thrive Incubator.
Okay.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah. So I'm sure are we answering your question?
Kind of, yeah.
I would say sharing the idea like you just did, I think there'll be lots of people coming up to you afterwards. So that's the beginning.
Thank you very much. Yes.
My name is Servus Credit Union. You talk a lot about collaboration pretty well throughout these forums. What sort of collaboration, this question is to all panels, that you would do as far as working with the governments or any sort of provincial or whatever, that can affect some of the changes to come?
Well, I'll start. So we're early days into this, but Vern is here and he leads our government relations practice. What we need to do, if we're truly going to help shape the financial fitness of Albertans, we need to get financial capability building into our school system. We have to get that across Canada. We are failing the next set of leaders by not actually giving financial education to our youth. It's nowhere in our curriculum. It's provincial. When a financial task force went across the country and tried to make it happen, the minister at the time put it on a shelf. And so we have to do our part with government to try and get them to think about what are the problems. And it starts with parenting and it starts with school systems that aren't actually giving citizens, future taxpayers, the skills around money. So I would say that's one thing that we're looking at doing. We're working with the government right now on financial literacy, but frankly, financial literacy is not financial capability building. They're very different. And so it's about habit changing. It's about behaviors. It's about changing our view of money. And so that's bigger work, which is why in our noble purpose work, we actually asked our employees, yes, values are important, but what's more important are your 3 behaviors that we want every employee to live. Listen to understand. Listen to the member sharing that story, like your story about being an immigrant to Canada. Having empathy is the second behavior. And the third is being politely assertive enough to ask that member, hey, why are you spending more than what you make every month? So I would say there's a lot of collaboration that happens with that. We're collaborating with Financial Health Network in order to get the know-how to do that. Because frankly, we've been doing it like every other bank. And that's not working, obviously. And we also are part of we're trying to solve the same problem that we created. We're trying to get more stable deposits as an industry. We're trying to actually get more people to save. But what have we done as an industry? We've taught people to have really nice credit cards and really nice line of credits. And we've taught people to be in debt. We now have to teach them to save. So there's a lot in that, in collaboration.
For me, it's walk the talk. So as business leaders, we need to find ways to be engaged in the community. And again, I'll use an example that we're doing. So within Alberta, there's a group called Inclusion Alberta, which is designed to help hire individuals that have various disabilities. And so how do you support something like that? You see the warm and fuzzy pictures of people who have done this and all these great stories. Well, that can make you feel good if you make your donation. So the way that I approach it and the way I encourage my employees and my partners is that we need to be actively engaged. So not only are we as an employer within Inclusion Alberta, but we're also, as the Rotary District Governor, I was on a board that represented this partnership across the province, and we made a submission to the provincial government. Again, we're walking the talk, and I will give our Premier Jason Kenney credits. He has now hired an Inclusion Alberta individual in his office and a couple of other offices. So there's a connection there. The other thing is Franco and I are engaged with Rotary. And Rotary provides some incredible avenues, and we're both engaged. We're part of this called the Community Hub program that's been a partnership between the Calgary Clubs of Calgary and the United Way and supporting these 8 different community hubs. And what we're trying to do is get really actively engaged in different projects, not just writing checks, but involved in the projects, working at the Alex or doing different things. And how do I translate that into my business world is, again, I start to encourage my employees to participate. And a funny story was this food distribution group that I just acquired. I said, well, I'd like us to have for our Christmas party, I'd like us to all go to the food bank and work at the food bank for a shift. and I got 2 out of the 40 names signing up. What's the problem here? Well, we already donate to the food bank. What do you mean? Well, we give our food that's expiring, we give that to the food bank. So how is that a donation? How is that how are we engaged? Oh, and the other thing is that we're not willing to give up our pay for when we go work there. So this group would actually deduct the hours. So if they took 4 hours in the afternoon, they would deduct the hours, wouldn't get paid for it, and they're being told to. So anyway, we got rid of that. We're in a regular cycle because we've got them down there. They've experienced it and engaged in it. They are now, we're committed to once a month, 10 of our employees going to work at the food bank on a regular cycled process. But again, it's the walking the talk. It's getting engaged in lobby groups. As you can tell, I'm not very shy about expressing my political opinions or how we would do that. And I've been involved with the Calgary Economic Development Group and doing some things with our city. So it's a matter of not just saying there's a problem, and we've got enough politicians telling us that. Let's come up with some solutions and get engaged with it.
For me, it's simple. When I started my business, there was a point in which I was determining whether I would do it as a not-for-profit or as a social enterprise. Governments move extremely slow. To change policy, I wouldn't have created an effect yet. Nothing would have changed if I went the political route or if I went government policy way. So we decided to be a carrot instead of a stick. In order to collaborate with government, it would really be having them follow suit, continue the trend. The Accessible Canada Act received royal assent in June 21st, so that's a big first step. So that's going to change a lot of policy. That's going to change a lot of building design standards as it comes. Their goal is 2050 to be fully barrier-free in Canada. I will get us there much, much quicker. But again, like to tie that with government, there's a social aspect to that. Though I'm working on the accessibility side, I have partnered with not-for-profits that help improve the inclusive side. And I think the government can help with that, again, through kind of schools and growing up. Nobody makes friends in a classroom. The playgrounds aren't accessible. Only a finite number of schools are accessible. So integration doesn't really exist in that regard. I think there's a difference between special needs and disability. And I think there's different cases for each on what those needs need to be fulfilled. So having that inclusive element addressed is beyond my scope, and I think that that's where that interjection would need to occur. But in terms of my own business, I think that they move at a far too slow of a rate for me to really rely on anything outside of that as a business.
Thank you very much. And we're getting to the time that we're going to get together and this is not a pass or fail kind of thing, but but it would be to say, given everything we've heard up to this point, and particularly this afternoon in this workshop, what's one thing you think you might do or will do? So I'm suggesting that we're spread all over, so we might want to, because then our panel can also sit at the tables as well and kind of hear what that is. So could we just quickly, we got some people already at tables, and just share just one thing not with the entire group, but with your table. So let's kind of assemble, come together. Let's see if we can get 4 tables. So quickly, and we'll just do it, okay? That'd be great.